And I'm delighted to say, Sir Rick of Wakeman, Rick Wakeman himself, joins me live in the studio. Where is your night, Rick? Good morning, Rick. Great to see you again.
Good to see you. Yeah, you well?
Brilliant stuff. Now, this album is a lovely album because it's not just David Bowie music. You've got a couple of Bowie tunes on there, other tracks as well, done with a very kind of classical piano style. How did you choose the tracks on the new album?
It was not that easy, strangely enough. I mean, when Universal came to me and said, "Why haven't you done an album like this in all the year?" And I thought, I don't know why, because I've done so much piano on other people's stuff, like Morning is Broken for Cat Stevens and other things like that, and the Bowie stuff. And they said, you really should do this. And I thought that'd be a good idea. So I made a list of pieces of music that I quite like, some very classical and whatever.
There's Debussy on this, Tchaikovsky, I think.
There's all sorts, of which I've done not as the original, but done in sort of variations that I fancied doing. What was interesting was some pieces worked instantly. Some that I thought wouldn't work. I mean, I did Stairway to Heaven, and I thought, that's got no chance of working. And it worked a treat. Something else I wanted to do, I wanted to make a little suite out of Bohemian Rhapsody. We spent about 4 days on it, and in the end, my engineer and co-producer, Eric, said, give up. Because it just wouldn't work. So it was a lot of trial and error to find a piece.
Because you'd think that feels like an operatic classical piece anyway.
Absolutely, it does. But I think one of the things I mean, Brian May is one of my dearest close friends, and I know the work that they put into Bohemian Rhapsody, and they sort of completely painted the picture, if you know what I mean. So there wasn't really any space when
there was no room for a different interpretation.
No, there wasn't, because they really thought of everything on how they did it, and that's what it was. Help was an interesting one. I did Beatles Help, and I did it as a very, very slow piece, because I remember way back in 1968, Deep Purple did a very slow version of Help, which I loved. And somebody actually told me the other day that in an interview in 1970, John Lennon complained that he didn't like the version of Help the Beatles had done. It had to be an up-tempo thing because of the film, and he really wanted it to be a ballad.
Because the lyrics are very plaintive, aren't they? When you listen to it, it's a very melancholy song, potentially.
Yeah, they are, and I never knew that. I mean, I knew John, but I never knew that fact, so I thought it was quite interesting.
And the album's called Piano Portraits. It's got some amazing tunes on it, amazing tracks on it. A lot of focus, though, particularly today, is going on the David Bowie tracks you've chosen. I mentioned you played the Mellotron, I think it was, on Space Oddity.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and what was David Bowie like then, in the late 60s?
Well, I met him in 68, first of all. I was involved with a company called Regal Zonophone, of which the late Denny Cordell was the main producer. He was the guy who discovered Joe Cocker and did all the Joe Cocker stuff. And he had 2 staff producers there at a time, one Tony Visconti and the other one was Gus Dudgeon. And they looked after people like Bowie and T-Rex, Mark Bolan, and that kind of thing. And I was just doing sessions whenever I could for these people. And I'd done a session for Tony Visconti for a band called Junior's Eyes. For an album called Battersea Power Station, which is a fun album, actually. It was really good. And when I was in the studio, Morgan Studios, there was one of the first Mellotrons stuck in the corner.
Was that like an early synthesizer?
It was. It sort of ran off of tapes. I mean, it was a nightmare. I mean, you couldn't keep them in tune. And I said, have you used this? And they said, no, I can't keep it in tune. I said, can I have a play around? They said, yeah. So whilst they were doing other stuff, I played around with it for an hour, and I found a crafty way of keeping it in tune when you played. And Tony came in and said, how'd you do that? I said, well, there's a way of playing around with the pitch control and the tone. He went, okay, let's go. And that was it, really. And then 1969, I was working at the Top Rank Ballroom in Reading, apart from doing sessions. And I got a phone call there during rehearsals from Tony. He said, can you get up to London quick? I need some Mellotron playing on a track for David Bowie. And I said, yeah, okay. So I jumped in the car, shot up to Wardour Street, to St Anne's Court, to Trident Studios, and went down, and there was the dreaded Mellotron, and David said, can't keep it in tune. And I said, you can. So we did Space Oddity, did the track, and then came up afterwards, and he said, thanks very much. He said, I've heard some of the piano stuff that you've done with Tony. He said, do you want to do some piano stuff with me? And I said, I'd love to. So went up a few weeks later, and I did Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud and Memory of a Free Festival and a couple of other things with him.
All off his first proper album.
All of the first proper album. And then we became good mates, and he invited me round to his house in Beckenham, where he lived then, which I named Beckenham Palace. It was the biggest house I'd ever seen. Because I'm only a little two up, two down.
They had the whole ground floor or something, didn't they, this massive
for the band,
place? Yeah.
And there was like a minstrel's gallery. I mean, his hallway was bigger than my house. And went in there and sat down at the... He said, sit down at the piano, beautiful grand piano, and he had this old battered 12-string guitar. So I'm going to play you some songs. and he played me the songs which were all turned out to be on Hunky Dory, and one after the other, these great songs came out.
If only you'd had a tape recorder on you and press play and record.
If you know. But what was amazing, I said to him halfway through, when he came to life on Mars, I said, that is just gorgeous. He said, think of it as a piano solo. He said, I want Hunky Dory very much to be piano-based. Think of them all as piano pieces. Make some notes, which is what I did. And the only thing, he said, any questions? And I said, yeah, well, I said, why are you playing them to me on that tatty old 12-string guitar, which couldn't have been worth more than a fiver? It was horrible. And I can remember to this day, he put it in the case at the side, and he said, the reason I do that, he said, because if the songs sound good when I'm playing them on that, imagine what they'll sound like on good instruments. And he said, that's something you should always write. He said, too many people fool themselves by writing stuff on great-sounding instruments, and it's the sound that's fooling them.
OK, so your album's called Piano Portraits. I'm going to play another track of it in just a moment, but how would you sum up, if it's possible, the career of David Bowie, what he brought to the world of music and the art world?
I think he was more influential than any other artist. I know that sounds like a bit of a cliche thing, but I think he was more important than the Beatles, than the Stones, and than all of the writers, because he incorporated all forms of art. He incorporated fashion, he incorporated music, he incorporated words, poetry, everything. He incorporated lifestyle, and I think that his influence will be more felt by artists and musicians for years to come than any other artist there was.
Rick, great to see you again. The album is beautiful. It's called Piano Portraits. Here's a bit of another track off it. This is a lovely version of Cat Stevens had a hit with it. He didn't write it. This is Rick Wakeman's version of Morning Has Broken.